Question number 3, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he enforce high standards of conduct on all his ministers, including himself?
Mr Speaker.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, yes, however, with respect to my actions at a panel CAF, my conduct clearly upset the staff member in question. I sincerely apologise to her at the time. I became aware of that and I've continued to do so publicly.
Which time? Supplementary.
No. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he accept that repeatedly pulling a woman's hair, who was just trying to do her job, despite her indicating to him to stop, was unworthy of any grown man, let alone the Prime Minister?
Good question.
Mr Speaker,
right
yes,
Honourable Prime Minister.
I accept I misread the situation. I apologise for that.
Answer the question.
Supplementary.
Supplementary. Order. Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he accept that through his embarrassing and weird behaviour, he has now made the office of Prime Minister of New Zealand an international laughingstock?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, no, but I do accept I have to take responsibility for my own actions.
Yesterday you said you hope not.
Supplementary. Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Has he read the section of the Cabinet Manual that states, quote, incumbent ministers should ensure that any requests they make for advice or information from their officials is for the purposes of their portfolio responsibilities and not for party political purposes, end quote. And if so, was the advice and information Simon Bridges sought from NZTA used in National's Northland Bridges policy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, my understanding is that information was asked for. I might need to check that, and that's appropriate.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Why is he allowing a minister whose portfolio conflicts with the alleged actions of his own brother to remain as minister, and why doesn't he follow the high standard I set in temporarily standing down Carmel Sepuloni in similar circumstances?
Order. Order. I'm going to allow the Prime Minister, it's a very marginal call, I'm going to allow the Prime Minister to deal with it. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, firstly, because I took advice on the day that I became aware of it. The advice was very clear that there had been no conflict up to that point and any potential conflict could be managed. I think all members of this House appreciate that there are potential conflicts as an elected MP right through to a Cabinet Minister, and they need to be managed. In relation to the actions that he took with Carmel Sepuloni, I personally think he made the wrong call.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he stand by his statement made after Mike Sabin resigned that Mr Sabin could have been a minister, and what does that say about the standards he sets for ministerial office?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, I do stand by that statement. In the time that Mike Sabin was part of our caucus, I actually found him to be a very thoughtful, hard-working member of Parliament. He had good policy ideas, and I think he could have made a very, very good minister.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Isn't it true that he is allowing ministers off the hook because he's lost his moral authority, and that's why Judith Collins is sharpening her knives?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, no.
Supplementary question.
Order. Order.
Supplementary
question. Order.
Does
Order. No, just before I call the member, I'm just waiting for a bit of assistance from my left. Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Does this mean that his subterranean standards are so low that Judith Collins, despite the appalling Orovita scandal and numerous gaffes, is soon to be welcomed back into Cabinet?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, the great news on this side of the House is that we have a caucus full of talent and opportunity. Judith happens to be one of them. There are many others, and if one day an opportunity opens itself, I'm sure Judith, along with many others, will be wanting to put their hand up. It's nice to have some fantastic people to choose from.
Order. 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 Question number 4, David Seymour.